At this point, there's no escaping the Maxx Crosby trade rumors, but there's only one way a trade actually makes sense for the Chicago Bears.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. On the show today, I want to check in on the latest Maxx Crosby buzz that doesn't have me convinced the Bears are going to make a deal, but we'll talk about what a deal would have to look like if Chicago is going to be on the potential receiving end of the blockbuster trade. We got a number of trade rumor updates, and I want to also discuss where the DJ Moore trade conversation fits into the broader player movement picture for the league right now ahead of the start of free agency. And we also got an update on the Gervon Dexter trade situation that maybe everyone jumped the gun just a little bit too much there. We'll try and figure out what actually is going on here and what the future might hold for the Bears and their young defensive tackle. I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is giving you a way to get even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. But the Maxx Crosby trade rumors picked up full steam once again to start the week as Sports Illustrated MMQB insider Albert Breer posted some updates with some of his thoughts coming from the NFL scouting combine, listing the Bears, of course, as one of the teams that has been, quote, keeping tabs on Maxx Crosby's availability, which isn't necessarily new or breaking information. But what Breer did say was that, quote, I'd lean toward a Maxx Crosby trade happening and maybe this week. And all of a sudden, we're picking up some steam now. And all of the fan bases that have been mentioned in a potential Maxx Crosby trade are figuring out what it's going to take and why their team is going to be the one that actually makes that move and why, they're going to buy their Maxx Crosby jerseys and all that sort of stuff. And Chicago Bears fans have been right in there looking at it, trying to figure out what kind of deal would work for both sides. I think, of course, every fan base thinks they're going to get a good deal and they're not going to have to overpay for the player, when in reality, the Raiders are going to want as big of a haul as they can possibly get here. But you can see why it would make a lot of sense for the Chicago Bears, why they're a team that's at least interested and involved. But we've talked before on this podcast about how now is not necessarily the time to mortgage the future for a potential Maxx Crosby trade. So for me, the only way a Maxx Crosby trade makes sense for the Bears is if it doesn't involve fully mortgaging your future and giving up a bunch of, future draft pick capital in order to get this player. You can understand that might be what the Raiders want and prefer as they're trying to build their team and be a younger team. That's why they would be moving on from Maxx Crosby. They would be getting worse now with the idea of trying to get better later, and draft picks are one of the best, if not the best, ways to do that. And so theoretically, or realistically, it's not likely that these two desires align, where it's like the Bears want Crosby without giving up a bunch of future draft picks, and the Raiders don't want to give up Crosby without getting a bunch of future draft picks. So the one way this would have to work for both sides is if you could convince the Raiders to value players that you give up in a trade, not more than draft picks, but enough to replace draft picks in that deal. You're going to have to give draft picks, or at least draft pick singular. But to me, the one way this works for the Chicago Bears and then potentially the Raiders is if you're packaging players with a pick or maybe two. So, right, it's some combination of DJ Moore, who we can all see why the Raiders might want a #1 receiver for their young quarterback that they're about to take with the #1 overall pick. DJ Moore under contract for 4 more years, still on the younger side, but entering his prime. He's 28, so you've got him under contract, through age 32. He's not old, but he's not he's not super young either, but right there in the prime of his career. So he can contribute now and be a contributor for that young quarterback throughout his rookie contract. So that would be a fit for them. The Raiders are also a team that has been linked to potentially wanting Tremaine Edmunds at linebacker. And so if you could package DJ Moore and Tremaine Edmunds and probably your first round pick this year, number 25 overall, that's the type of deal that I can start to get behind and feel like makes sense for the Chicago Bears. That, yes, you don't want to give up a first round pick and not have that young, cheap player over the next 4 years. But if you're only giving up one super premium pick there, and essentially Maxx Crosby is your first round pick this year, I can live with that, knowing that I've still got second, third, fourth round picks this year, et cetera, and then next year, first, second, third, fourth round picks. Like I don't know if that deal, as I just described it there, is enough for the Raiders of just more Edmunds and a first round pick for Maxx Crosby. I think maybe the highest I would go is like more Edmunds first round pick and then like next year's second round pick, like a 2027 second round pick plus a 2026 first round pick this year plus those two players. Like if you're spreading out the draft pick damage, so you're not giving up both picks in the same year, and the future pick is maybe a little bit later. It's not back-to-back first round picks, but maybe it's a little bit easier to absorb losing a future second or maybe third round pick. It'd be nice if in exchange the Raiders would throw a pick back for you. Like you may recall in the Khalil Mack trade, the Bears gave up 2 firsts and a third, but they got Mack and a second round pick, a future second round pick back. Like if they could get some kind of, if I'm giving up my future second, if the Raiders would give me a fourth round pick or something, just to kind of balance that a little bit more, that would be preferable. But I can't do more than that. I can't give up both first round picks for Maxx Crosby here. And one of the other contingencies here that I think is important for a potential Maxx Crosby deal is what the Bears could or might get for Tyson Bagent in a potential trade. There was some reporting from somewhere, and I don't remember where this came from, so I apologize I don't have a good source for you here. But there was some reporting from somebody, it might have been Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune, I can't remember, that the Bears would be looking for a potential like second round pick for Tyson Bagent from whatever team might trade for him. That I don't know if they can actually get that, but say you've, and this, like, if we start extending this hypothetical, that's why it's unrealistic. But like, say you traded Tyson Bagent to the Cardinals for a second round pick this year or next year, then you could use that pick to go to the Raiders with Moore and Edmunds and maybe your first round pick. And then all of a sudden, it's like you're just trading Bagent for him rather than trading a future draft pick because it's an extra draft pick that you would have got for Bagent. Instead, that goes towards Maxx Crosby, and you're not losing any of your original draft capital there. Like, you can start to find ways to try and make this all work. And from a salary cap space standpoint, like if you're trading Edmunds and DJ Moore, you're freeing up a little over $30 million in cap space. You're trading for Maxx Crosby, you're taking on about $30 million in cap space. So the money evens out nicely there. But the hard part here, that all sounds great for the Chicago Bears, but you've got, I think 6 other teams were named by Albert Breer as teams keeping tabs on a Maxx Crosby trade. The Dallas Cowboys, Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots, Philadelphia Eagles, Los Angeles Rams. As soon as you start to get multiple suitors making offers and bidding for a player, well, then the price goes up to the highest bidder. And, if one of those teams is willing to give up 2 first-round picks, like, I'm out. Sorry. And if the Raiders say, yeah, we'd rather have 2 high draft picks than 1 high draft pick and your players, like, that's what it would hinge on the most. You have to convince the Raiders that DJ Moore and Tremaine Edmunds are super valuable to them. The way that, like, I think Dallas, when they traded for Micah Parsons, kind of overvalued Kenny Clark in that trade. Like, we thought they would get more than 2 first-round picks for Micah Parsons, but they really viewed Kenny Clark as this can't-miss player for that trade. So if the Raiders really love DJ Moore and really like Tremaine Edmunds, like, that feels to me like the only way a Bears Maxx Crosby deal happens. Ryan Poles is not in the business of trading a bunch of draft picks to go get this player. It has to work with primarily player assets and then like 1 premium draft asset or so on top of that. That's the only way I think this would make sense for both sides. So I don't think it's going to happen, but that doesn't mean a DJ Moore trade couldn't still happen elsewhere and just not be involved in the Maxx Crosby side of things. But I do think there is a roadblock in the way for a DJ Moore trade as well. That doesn't mean it won't happen, just means it might take a little longer. We'll explore what that might look like and what the Bears might be waiting for next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major tax upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. I do want to thank you again for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. Whether it's your first time ever listening or your 500th time listening, we do really appreciate you. If you want to take your listening to the next level, you can check out the Everydayers Club to get access to an ad-free audio feed of Locked On Bears. And with free agency here, we're going to give you 1 month free of the Everydayers Club. So you can have a full month of no ads on Locked On Bears, plus access to the Locked On Bears group chat in the Locked On Everydayers Club Discord server. If you want to check it out, the website to go to is lockedonbears.supercast.com, and you got to use our special code FREEAGENCY, no spaces, now through March 15th. So you could go ad-free and then keep the conversation going on Discord. To join the club, it's lockedonbears.supercast.com, promo code FREEAGENCY for your free month of the Everydayers Club. And certainly in the Everydayers Club, in the group chat, we're going to be talking about DJ Moore trade situations, well, all throughout the offseason until something happens or something doesn't. He's a name that's been connected to any potential wide receiver needy team across the NFL. And you could start to build up a decent list of suitors, especially ahead of the start of NFL free agency. And honestly, even in free agency this season, it's not like there's a ton of like super elite high-level wide receivers that are young and productive the way that DJ Moore is. Like, yeah, Tyreek Hill is out there, but he's 32, and even Deebo Samuel is 30. Mike Evans is 33. Like, free agent receivers tend to be older and a little bit less reliable. And sure, DJ Moore's not coming off of his best season, but nonetheless, he will have some decent value on the trade market if the Bears do decide to move him, especially if he's not involved in a potential Maxx Crosby trade. But I do think that the Bears, aren't going to be eager to, they're not going to shop around DJ Moore. You know, they're not calling other teams saying, hey, do you want DJ Moore? We're trying to get rid of him. It's more of them acknowledging that, hey, he's got some good value, and if a team makes us a good offer, we might be willing to do so, especially if we could get Maxx Crosby in exchange for him and free up some salary cap space in the meantime. But the big obstacle I see that stands in the way of a DJ Moore trade is Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown, because he is the more prized wide receiver trade target that if I'm a team that really wants to go out and upgrade my wide receiving core, he's at the top of my list. He's where I'm starting. He's a little bit younger and certainly has been more productive throughout his career, but even this past season, he's been just under a 1,500-yard receiver twice in 2022 and 2023. Then he's been over 1,000 yards each of the last couple of seasons, even though he's dealt with some injuries in that. He's had at least 7 touchdowns in each of the last 4 seasons, over 13 yards per catch over that time. And not to say that like DJ Moore is some slouch, but like teams are going to want more of an A.J. Brown type of receiver first. And I think that's got to be the first domino to go. And then the teams that miss out on A.J. Brown then look to DJ Moore to be potentially the second option here. And I can go back to Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated, we talked about earlier with a Maxx Crosby update. He also had some A.J. Brown intel where he said it's a delicate situation that Philly might not be actively shopping him because that could make things a little bit messier. But he said that A.J. Brown's camp has looked around at some potential landing spots with some genuine interest. The Eagles have quietly had some talks, and Brown's side have quietly had some talks. So, but the problem is the Eagles want a potential first-round pick and maybe another top 100 draft pick, similar to what the Packers got for Devonta Adams. Our friend Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles said like no less than a first-round pick for A.J. Brown. And so teams are going to call on that first. And Philadelphia might not be in a super huge hurry. Like if no one's making it messy, and his contract is not all that expensive either. Like I think he's due about the same amount as DJ Moore this season. I mean, I guess if a team traded for DJ Moore, they would have to pay him less than the Bears do. But like the Bears and the Eagles, if they keep A.J. Brown and DJ Moore, they'll both be paying him a similar amount. So it's not like one is cost prohibitive more than the other. And Brown has been more productive, more of that true number one style of receiver. Whereas like DJ Moore is a number one caliber receiver, but not quite the same build and quite physicality and winning on the outside the same way. Like Moore is a better yards after catch type of receiver who can work in the slot and the outside and win a lot of different ways. Like we're nitpicking the differences between them, but the important thing is that like A.J. Brown is going to be the one who's commands more value and likely is the first receiver teams go after. And then if a team trades for A.J. Brown or the Eagles formally declare, hey, we are not trading A.J. Brown, he's sticking around, we're moving full speed ahead, trades are now off the table, that's when a team goes, all right, DJ Moore. You know, that's when they're ready to give the Bears their best offer, because they're not going to give the Bears their best offer if they're also trying to give the Eagles their best offer. And so, well, let's not pull the trigger on DJ Moore just yet until we see exactly whether we can get A.J. Brown, if we being this hypothetical other team, and also B, what A.J. Brown goes for, because you know A.J. Brown's trade price could have some influence on DJ Moore's trade price, because all of a sudden A.J. Brown sets the market there. Like if he gets the Devonta Adams type deal of like first and a third type of compensation, well then all of a sudden, you know, DJ Moore you're not getting a first round pick for DJ Moore, but you know, it just elevates that level of compensation potentially for him for the Chicago Bears. So they might also be interested in playing it slow and not just being eager to take the first offer that comes across the table. The risk you run there is that, you know, A.J. Brown doesn't get traded, or A.J. Brown gets traded for less than you think he should, and it's just a first-round pick, and all of a sudden that lowers DJ Moore's potential trade value. But I still think there's a certain order of dominoes. And then there's also dominoes that fall after DJ Moore, right? It's like if I'm a wide receiver needy team, A.J. Brown is first, fair enough. DJ Moore is option number 2 there, but like if they want to go younger receivers that aren't quite as proven, but certainly all of the potential is there, and we've seen some production, like Brian Thomas from the Jaguars is a name that's been thrown out as a potential trade target. He's only 23 years old and had a 1,300-yard rookie season, but dropped off quite a bit in year 2. Like he is probably next on that list, and we don't need to. It's not important whether we're ranking these guys in a specific order, but like, you know, Keon Coleman from the Bills is another name that's out there as a 22, about to be 23-year-old receiver. Certainly nowhere near the production of DJ Moore or A.J. Brown. Like, not to say that these guys are going to get a similar compensation, but it's just like there's a whole chain reaction of potential receivers available via trade. And teams are going to start at the top and work their way down unless they think, hey, we just want a younger guy that we can get a bargain for and go cheap after. But I just think DJ Moore is not necessarily going to be very many teams' first choice and top dog that they got to go after and make him the big priority. So I think as a result, the Bears might have to wait a little bit there. The problem is once you get into free agency, the longer you wait, the less salary cap space other teams are going to have to trade for DJ Moore. That even if they're not signing wide receivers to big money, because like we talked about, it's just not a super expensive wide receiver class in free agency. I mean, a couple of names out there, but not anything writing home about. But all of a sudden, well, instead of spending big on a receiver, a team spends big on a lineman or a DB or whatever. And then one of those teams that might have been interested in trading for DJ Moore, all of a sudden just doesn't have the salary cap space for it because they just decided to go in other directions. So like you can see where if the Bears were eager to get rid of DJ Moore, there would be a little bit of a hurry to say, okay, let's find a deal. But the Bears really aren't eager to move DJ Moore. And I think that lack of eagerness, that lack of like shopping him around, you know, the Bears are in a you come to us, we're not going to come to you type of move with Moore. I think it makes it more and more likely, potentially, the pun, I guess not intended, that he sticks around, or at least sticks around longer than we might think. You know, maybe you get to draft day and a team doesn't get the first round wide receiver that they want, and all of a sudden they become a little bit more desperate, and then they're willing to maybe create some more salary cap space. Or maybe you get a little closer to training camp and another team's receiver goes down in training camp, and then you move DJ Moore sometime around then. I mean, or dare I say the trade deadline. I wouldn't necessarily expect an in-season type of thing because it makes your roster better, makes your roster worse mid-season. But whatever team trades for DJ Moore will have to pay him $16.5 million this season. So they have to have at least that in salary cap space plus extra space for all the other moves that they're going to want. It's good value for that team, but not a lot of teams are going to carry that much late into the offseason, and that's what complicates a potential DJ Moore deal. Also, some new complications for a potential Gervon Dexter trade. That the news leaked out at the Combine that the Bears were getting calls about Gervon Dexter, and now some very solidly credible reporting refuting that initial trade call report. So we'll take a look at where things stand for Gervon Dexter and what the future might hold on the Chicago Bears defensive line next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Indeed. Between workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, there's still one position you have to fill sitting open. And when the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed's sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for with the skills, experience, and location you're looking for. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed worldwide, according to Indeed data. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. College basketball is nonstop, and now that we're in March, there's big games, tight spreads, and momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want. Rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your cup of tea, and you can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see this slate playing out. Then you apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payouts. Whether you're riding with a pretty strong Illinois team, Purdue's right there with them towards the top of the standings in the Big Ten. You Northwestern Wildcats out there, maybe not so much, but whether you want to go safe, go bold, or ride with the team you've been following all season, it's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. When we were at the NFL Combine, there's plenty of buzz about Gervon Dexter all of a sudden being, I don't want to say on the trade block, but being a trade target for the Chicago Bears. I believe it was, I always say the wrong name. It's not Andrew Schultz. That's the comedian. It's the other Schultz. Jordan Schultz, I believe, is the NFL insider. Jordan Schultz reported that the Chicago Bears had received calls on Gervon Dexter. I think that was the specific language. It was not that they were seeking calls. It's not that they were making calls, but like the Chicago Bears had received calls on Gervon Dexter and potentially looking to trade him. It was, quote, the actual tweet from Jordan Schultz was, sources, teams have inquired with the Bears about trading for defensive tackle Gervon Dexter as the free agent DT market and draft class are not deep. He is entering the final year of his rookie contract, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, it made sense in terms of Dennis Allen wanting to get his defensive tackles in the building and Gervon Dexter maybe not being the exact perfect scheme fit for what Dennis Allen wants to do. And so if the guy's going to be a free agent next year anyway, and you don't feel like he's a fit, and so you're going to let him go in free agency, why not trade him away early and get some guaranteed draft capital for him as opposed to letting him walk in free agency and maybe hoping for a compensatory draft pick, especially in an offseason where you're going to retool the defensive tackle position anyway. So whether he's here or not, like you still want to sign somebody or one or two players and draft one or two players at the defensive tackle position. So you might as well kind of just say, hey, we gave it a try. It was a good fit for Eberflus. He drafted him, but you're not really my guy or the direction we're going to go. So, hey, it's been fun. Appreciate your work, but we're going to go in a different direction. Not so fast, as it turns out. Typically, NFL insider Jordan Schultz has been a fairly reliable insider. Maybe he's not quite on the level of the Adam Schefters and Ian Rappaports of the world, but certainly he has gotten real scoops and has built credibility as an insider. And so we didn't have any reason to immediately doubt Jordan Schultz's report, but a more credible reporter has now thrown quite some cold water on that. Chicago Tribune reporter Brad Biggs is hands down the most plugged in and connected Bears reporter out there. I have a ton of respect for the work that Brad Biggs does. He's old school, and he has better sources, more sources inside the building than anybody else who covers this team, and they're legit. And I have seen him talk to those sources firsthand at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Like I know who some of them are. I know they're real. I know their roles. I'm not going to, put out all his laundry or whatever, but I know where a lot of his information comes from, and I can tell you it is rock solid when he does get it. And so Brad Biggs was on The Score in Chicago, the radio station, and was asked about the Gervon Dexter thing and said, quote, "They're not taking calls on him. They're not making calls on him. I'm reporting nothing is happening on that." Brad Biggs says Gervon Dexter not getting traded. The Bears aren't listening to calls. They're not taking calls. They're not receiving calls. Very directly refuting the Jordan Schultz report that came out at the Combine. And if it wasn't Brad Biggs, I might still be like, well, maybe they are still listening to trades. But like when Brad Biggs is the one saying it, and he's as emphatic about it as he said it on the radio, like I can't help but say, like, yeah, I'm siding with him on this one, that maybe Gervon Dexter legitimately isn't available. Now, where the report comes from, like, it wouldn't surprise me if a team had called the Bears and mentioned in passing Gervon Dexter, and then Jordan Schultz found out and said, oh, the Bears took a call on Gervon Dexter, even though that wasn't, necessarily the crux of the conversation. Like, maybe there's a way where both things are true, where what Jordan Schultz said technically was true, but what Brad Biggs is saying is more true, to say that they're not looking to trade him. They don't want to trade him. They're not planning on trading him. Don't expect him to be traded. And so then we come back to the scheme fit conversation then. Like, where exactly does he fit on this Bears defensive line then moving forward? I mean, obviously a defensive tackle, but like Dennis Allen tends to prefer quick off the snap, 3 technique pass rushers who are that explosive get off to penetrate up the field as a one gap pass rusher. And he tends to prefer big, stout, strong nose tackles who can hold a couple gaps and be space eaters that free up the linebackers behind them. And Gervon Dexter isn't quite either one, but has aspects of both, but isn't really dominant in either area. Like, he has some pass rushing upside for sure. He's got impressive athletic tools for his size, but he is famously slow off the snap. Like, that's like his biggest weakness, is like when the ball is snapped, he takes a while to get up, and he comes up very vertical and not very explosive upfield. And so like he's a valuable player that you don't just want to cast away for no reason, but like not really the perfect 3 technique for Dennis Allen. And he's also not powerful, stout, anchoring specially enough to be like the full-time nose tackle either. Or do you go through this offseason and you ask him to lose weight to get more explosive, or gain weight to get stronger? It just feels like he's kind of in this hybrid position on the defensive tackle depth chart, where he's not quite a nose tackle and he's not quite the 3 technique either. And you got to get more players at both positions anyway. So then does he kind of just rotate in as a jack of all trades, master of none, versatile player there? like he's your pass rushing nose tackle on passing downs, I guess. Or he's your run stopping 3 technique on running downs. It just, there isn't quite a perfect natural fit for him here. And that's why the trade rumors made sense, but don't seem to be happening, and that's fine. They'll see what they can do with Gervon Dexter this season while also continuing to add at that position. I certainly understand not wanting to subtract at a spot that's already a weakness, so I get the Bears holding on to that, and there wasn't really much of a salary cap savings there. To me, it was more about just asset management at the end of a rookie contract for a guy that doesn't seem like someone you're going to give a contract extension to and keep around. So maybe it could be something that, training camp or even trade deadline, if new defensive tackles come in and he kind of is the odd man out of the rotation, you trade him for a late round pick and try and salvage something there. But we shall see. I don't think the Bears trade rumors, speculation, conversations are going to go away anytime soon this offseason. If they make any kind of big trade, you can be sure we're breaking it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be sure to check out the Everydayers Club and use that promo code FREEAGENCY, all one word, to get a free month of ad-free Everydayers Club Locked On Bears audio feed compatible with any of your podcasting apps. Again, the website, it's in the show note description, or it's lockedonbears.supercast.com. Get you in the Locked On Bears group chat as well in the Discord server. Or you can keep tuning in the same way you always have. We're free and available on all platforms. I'm always going to make sure that in every Locked On Bears episode, we give you another opportunity to bear down.